Imagine waking up in a hotel room, completely undressed, next to a man you barely know. His expression? Irritated. This is how we meet Chusi, who, upon waking, finds herself in a strange and inexplicable situation next to Ginseng. But how did she end up here? The truth is that the night before, Chusi was at a bar with her outspoken friend Lin Xiaodong. Lin, without beating around the bush, encourages Chusi to finally have a passionate night with her boyfriend, believing it's the key to solidifying their relationship. Lin leaves no room for doubt, convinced this is the right decision for Chusi. Reluctantly, but influenced by Lin, Chusi follows her friend to a hotel room where her boyfriend is supposedly waiting. But when she opens the door, there stands Ginseng, a mysterious man who is nothing like she expected. What happens next sets off a series of events that spiral completely out of Chizia's control. Back in the present, Ginseng doesn't seem interested in discussing what happened. He adopts a cold, pragmatic stance, pulling out a check for 5 million yuan and handing it to her as if it were compensation to make everything disappear. He suggests Chusi accept the money and move on with her life, as if that night had never happened. Still processing the shock and humiliation, she refuses to take the money. Determined to resolve things quickly, Ginseng leaves the room, and Chusi, filled with a mix of anger and shame, follows him to the elevator. She tries to return the check, but on the way, she bumps into Alex, a world-renowned jewelry designer who also does business with Ginseng. Observant and seasoned, Alex immediately notices something off. Both have marks on their bodies, hinting at an untold story between them. Despite Ginseng's attempt to cover up the situation by claiming Chusi as his fiancée, Alex remains skeptical, sensing there's more to this scene. Upon returning home, Chusi faces another devastating surprise. Death threats start to appear mysteriously, and as she steps to the front door, she's met with aggression from her grandmother. The emotional blow doesn't stop there. Her father, seeing a news report of Chusi leaving a hotel with Ginseng, decides to kick her out of the house. The public humiliation and familial rejection collide, and at that moment, everything seems to fall apart. As if that weren't enough, in the midst of this chaos, Chusi receives an unexpected call from her actual boyfriend, Saw Yekai. He's frantic, as he owes a massive sum to the same people threatening her, pleading for her help. The drama intensifies. Shortly after the call, Chusi receives another, this time from the Human Resources Department of One Mao Group, informing her that she's been hired as an administrative assistant. For her, this job is a lifeline amidst the storm her life has become. Meanwhile, Ginseng faces a crisis in his company. He discovers that due to the scandal involving his image with Chusi, major investors, including Alex, are pulling out. To manage the situation, he vows to resolve all issues within a month or resign as CEO. Leaving a tense meeting, Ginseng crosses paths with Chusi, who is carrying a large box of documents. Fate places them face to face, and he, frustrated with the complexity of their situation, grabs her arm and pulls her into his office. Ginseng's assistant, watching from afar, quickly alerts Mrs. Tang, his grandmother, about what's happening. Inside the office, Chusi is stunned to discover that Ginseng, the man from that confusing night, is the boss of the company she just joined. He demands she resign immediately to mitigate the scandal's fallout, but Chusi, now in a desperate position, refuses, as she needs the money to help pay Saw Yekai's debts. At the same time, Mrs. Tang arrives at the company, but upon encountering Chusi in the hallway, she suffers a severe asthma attack. In an instinctive act of empathy, Chusi helps her find her inhaler, saving her life. Seconds later, the elderly Mrs. Tang regains consciousness, but upon opening her eyes, doesn't recognize Chusi. Grateful yet confused, she promises the young woman that she will be rewarded in the future for her help. Later, in a tense conversation, Mrs. Tang scolds her grandson Ginseng with a stern look. She accuses him of getting involved with Chusi, a young woman at the center of a major scandal, and orders him to marry her immediately to quell the rumors that threaten both the family's reputation and the company's stability. That same afternoon, Ginseng hands Chusi a formal contract, a document stipulating that they must marry and pretend to be in love for 6 months. If they fulfill the agreement, Chusi will receive $2 million after the divorce. Chusi immediately refuses, insisting that she has a boyfriend, but Ginseng, with a sardonic smile, reveals that her boyfriend had already signed the same contract, leaving her in shock. Faced with this revelation, Chusi hesitates, but eventually agrees to the proposal, provided the time frame is reduced to just 3 months. Ginseng agrees, and with a determined expression, she signs the contract. The two shake hands in a formal gesture that marks the start of an unexpected arrangement. That evening, the new couple visits Mrs. Tang's home to officially present themselves. To their surprise, they realize that the young woman who helped Mrs. Tang earlier that morning is the same one who caused all the confusion. However, Mrs. Tang welcomes the news with joy and, with a warm smile, orders her grandson to treat his fiancée well. To their astonishment, the matriarch insists that the couple move in together immediately, leaving them speechless. After a lively dinner, Mrs. Tang, excited about the wedding plans, informs the couple that once they're married, they can start thinking about having children, leaving them even more shocked. Relieved that her grandson is in good hands, she departs for a family trip. However, before leaving, she installs a camera in the house to ensure the couple remains close. When they enter the master suite, they're greeted by an extremely romantic and sensual setting, as if planned by a movie director. The bed is adorned with rose petals, candles are lit, and lingerie leaves little to the imagination. Sensing the seductive atmosphere, Jin-sing wastes no time and brusquely removes the decorations, as if wanting to cut short any expectation of romance, reminding himself they need to have a child to please his grandmother. Instead of backing down, he quickly gets under the covers and moves on top of Chu-si, leaving her nervous and hesitant, feeling the weight of the situation. The next day, during an important meeting, Jin-sing is interrupted by constant complaints from his fiancée, who demands attention amidst his work commitments. Meanwhile, Mrs. Tang discovers the engagement of the company's CEO, Wang Mao, online. Without delay, she calls Jie Kai, an accomplice who had been betting on the outcome, and reveals her plan to extort money from the future couple, explaining why Jie Kai owes so much to these loan sharks. After days of tension, the much-anticipated day of the engagement arrives, and Xiaotong, Chizia's friend, is present. During the ceremony, the couple exchanges rings, forcing fake smiles while the guests watch. As they step down from the stage, Chu-si approaches Xiaotong for a hug, but instead of congratulations, Xiaotong confronts her, demanding that Chu-si give Jin-sing back, claiming he is her boyfriend. Thankfully, at this crucial moment, Jin-sing appears with a determined expression, holding a security camera recording from the night he and Chu-si first met. The video reveals a series of surprising events. Chu-si takes Jin-sing to the hotel room and then brings him back, already drunk and unconscious, due to a strange substance Xiaotong had slipped into his wine. Back in the present, Xiaotong, in an unexpected revelation, admits that all of this was part of her devious plan. Jin-sing fires her from the company and expels her from the ceremony, an act that echoes in his mind as an irreparable mistake. Minutes later, his heart grows heavy as he realizes that Chu-si is genuinely hurt. He finds her and, with a sincere expression, apologizes for treating her poorly, unaware that, just like him, she too was a victim of Xiaotong's treacherous games. With a caring gesture, Chu-si stands up and offers him a sincere hug, a moment of reconnection that softens the tension between them. Later, the couple returns to the ceremony, but the atmosphere is heavy. By chance, they overhear Xiaotong speaking discreetly with a group of friends. Xiaotong admits that he used Chu-si throughout their entire relationship to borrow money, a cruel act that shatters her heart. Overwhelmed with indignation, Chu-si begins to cry. The pain in her chest turns to anger, and she storms toward Jihikai, verbally attacking him for causing so much trouble for her family. Unfazed, Jihikai justifies himself, claiming that everything he gained was thanks to him, and that Chu-si should actually be grateful. His words are unbearable, and at that moment, Chizia's patience runs out. Just then, Jin-sing enters the room, and his presence shifts the dynamic. He demands that Chu-si step aside, so he can confront Jihikai. Holding a document in hand, Jin-sing reveals to Jihikai all the evidence he's gathered about the loans taken out in Chizia's name, a brilliant move that shows his determination to protect the woman he loves. Jin-sing doesn't hesitate to threaten him with the police if he doesn't stay away from Chu-si, an ultimatum that leaves Jihikai speechless. After the tense confrontation, that evening, the couple decides to have dinner at home, trying to forget everything that happened and relax a bit. Over dinner, they talk about the Chinese dramas that Chu-si loves watching on TV, laughing and sharing stories. As the evening progresses, and with a few glasses of wine, Chu-si becomes tipsy, her vulnerable heart opening up to the emotions surrounding her. In a moment of frustration, she lashes out at Jin-sing, confusing him with Jihikai, and curses him for using her, releasing all her pent-up pain. Amid her tears, she expresses relief that he never slept with her, as otherwise, she would have felt disgusted with herself. After the emotional outburst, she falls asleep on the couch beside him. Phew! Luckily, nothing happened between them. Jin-sing watches her for a moment and decides it's time to carry her to the master bedroom. As he heads to the bathroom to get ready for bed, he begins recalling the beautiful moments he's shared with Chu-si over the past few days. The idea that he might be slowly falling in love starts to creep into his mind. He approaches her, his heart racing, but to his surprise, Chusi wakes up, filled with emotion, and throws herself at him, giving him a passionate kiss. The intensity of the moment is palpable, and Jin Sing responds, lost in the magic of the kiss. After the kiss, Chusi, glowing with happiness, tries to take off his shirt, but he instinctively pushes her gently away from the bed, still processing the emotional whirlwind of the moment. The next morning, our protagonist wakes up with a massive hangover, her head pounding as she struggles to sit up in the living room. Looking around, she notices a clause in the contract stating that she was not allowed to drink alcohol. With a determined look, she promises her fiancé that she will never, under any circumstances, touch a drop of alcohol for the rest of her life. Minutes later, Chusi arrives at work and is greeted with an unexpected surprise. All her colleagues stand up and greet her as if she were the boss. She notices there's no pending work on her desk, which leads her to accept the position of spokesperson, determined to keep herself busy. Hours later, while in the bathroom, she overhears her co-workers bad-mouthing her, making awful comments about her and her position, as if she were inferior just because she's the boss's fiancé. Indignation and determination well up inside her, and Chusi decides to make a 180-degree turn in her life, determined to prove to everyone that she is truly capable. In the following days, she intensely focuses on her work, something Jin Sing begins to admire. As time passes, the way he treats her changes, and he starts to see Chusi not just as his fiancé, but as a strong and independent partner, further strengthening their connection. After several days of intense dedication to her work, Chusi becomes completely absorbed in her responsibilities. Meanwhile, her fiancé, Jin Sing, tries calling her several times, but she doesn't answer. She spent the entire night at the office, focused on finishing her projects. In a brief moment of pause, when she steps out to the bathroom for just a few minutes and returns, she is met with a terrifying sight. All of her work has mysteriously disappeared from the computer. What could have been a technical error turns into a nightmare when her supervisor, furious, grabs the papers and storms out, leaving Chusi in a state of shock. The pressure from work, combined with the lack of sleep, becomes unbearable, and in a moment of weakness, our protagonist faints. Luckily, she falls into Jin Sing's arms, who quickly carries her to his office. Oh, and remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming dramas. And if you're watching until this point, make sure to hit that like button. Back to the story. Our boss stays by Chizia's side until she wakes up, relieved to tell her that he managed to recover her work. As if that weren't enough, he also brings exciting news. Starting the next day, she'll be working as his personal assistant, which means a higher salary. Chizia's eyes light up with joy at the news, a new opportunity that promises to change her future. The next day, the atmosphere is filled with anticipation during an important meeting. Chusi is praised for her excellent performance at the company, and applause echoes throughout the room. As she exits, Chusi tries to chat with one of the employees, but Jin Sing interrupts, pulling her close, his jealousy barely concealed. No surprise there. Chusi notices the tension and, in a playful mood, begins commenting on other male colleagues, provoking even more jealousy in her fiancé. She watches closely, smiling to herself, and promises that from now on, she'll only have eyes for him. Later, the couple meets Mu Hua Jin, the CEO of the Mu Group. He observes Chusi with a curious look, as if he recognizes her from somewhere. During the conversation, he asks her opinions on various work-related matters, and just before saying goodbye, he asks if she's ever been to Jin Sing City. When she replies no, a subtle tension fills the air. Meanwhile, as all this is happening, Jin Sing receives a call from Shirshir, a beautiful model who seems to know far more about him than she should. Back with our protagonist, Chusi reflects on the day's events and excitedly shows Jin Sing a stunning outfit she prepared for him. He feels a bit nervous but doesn't hesitate to compliment her on the excellent work. The next day, tensions rise again when Jin Sing meets with Hua Jin. The CEO can't take his eyes off Chusi, and Jin Sing's possessiveness flares up. He abruptly cuts the conversation short, making it clear that Chusi is his fiancée, a statement that causes murmurs to ripple through the room. At the end of the meeting, Hua Jin switches tactics and uses a new strategy to charm her, offering Chu-si some sweets. Already in a bad mood from the earlier incident, Jin Sing tries to keep his cool and quickly steps away, hoping to avoid any misunderstandings. The couple then heads to Shershir's photo shoot. The model, with a charming smile, seems to know Jin Sing all too well, even knowing how he likes his coffee, despite it supposedly being their first meeting. Strange, isn't it? On the way back, Chu-si takes a photo with Shershir, who is a big fan of hers. In a moment of excitement, the model asks her to take a picture with Jin Sing to post on social media. He hesitates, sensing that something feels off, but eventually agrees, making sure to also take one with his fiancée to avoid any misunderstandings. However, moments later, Chu-si informs Jin Sing that the photo they took with Shershir is now trending on social media. Rumors of an alleged romantic relationship begin to swirl, and to make matters worse, she starts receiving hostile messages from Shershir's fans, accusing her of not being worthy of someone like Jin Sing, comparing her to the model, and calling Chu-si an ugly, washed-up mistress. In this delicate moment, Hua Jin appears with a sincere smile, trying to lift her spirits. He offers Chu-si a delicious cake, attempting to ease the sting of the cruel words surrounding her. During their conversation, Chu-si wonders why these comments affect her so much. Could she be developing feelings for Jin Sing? The thought echoes in her mind, but she chooses to ignore these feelings and continues the conversation. As she prepares to leave, Hua Jin notices that Chizia's phone wallpaper is a photo of her with a girl who looks exactly like her, a detail that is bound to stir even more curiosity in her mind. Back at the office, Jin Sing informs Chu-si that he's doubling her salary due to her excellent performance. However, she shows no reaction and simply heads back to her desk. While sitting there, she gazes at her engagement ring for a few seconds, then suddenly shakes her head, trying to calm her emotions. At that moment, she receives a message from Shisher inviting her to her place. When she arrives, the model apologizes for the negative comments on social media. Taking advantage of the fact that Chu-si is a fan, she asks about her relationship with Jin Sing, always helpful. Chu-si suggests she prepare a warm glass of milk for him, as it would make him feel loved. Inspired by the idea, Chu-si decides to go a step further and prepares a delicious dinner for Jin Sing, opting to make tofu with milk instead of just a glass. Unfortunately, shortly after trying the dish, Jin Sing begins to experience intense stomach pains. Guess what? He's lactose intolerant, and Chu-si knew that. Immediately, our boss locks himself in the bathroom for the entire night. The next morning, he goes to work as usual, but by chance, Chu-si shows up with a bottle of hot soup, perfect for soothing stomach troubles. She prepares a cup for him, but just at that moment, Shisher walks in with a bowl of oatmeal. Seeing the scene, Chu-si rushes out of the room. Jin Sing quickly gets up to follow his fiancée, but she accidentally spills the hot soup on his hand, delaying him for a few more minutes. She's really losing it. That afternoon, Chu-si recalls an episode from her school days when a boy was constantly bullied by his classmates for liking the color pink and because of his sexual orientation. Luckily, Jin Sing always defended him, and one day he gave him a pink thermos, just like the one Shisher uses. The situation gets a little awkward. Back in the present, Jin Sing finds Chu-si at the cafe, furiously stirring her oatmeal. He takes the bowl and starts eating, even though the oatmeal doesn't look as appetizing as before. That night, Chu-si receives a call from Shisher, who says she dropped by the company just to say hi. This makes her feel a bit better, as she believes the model isn't interested in her fiancé. The two start chatting until Shisher gives some questionable advice on how to win over Jin Sing. She should always be by his side, no matter where he goes. After that advice, Chu-si starts getting closer and closer to her fiancé, leaving him feeling quite uncomfortable, almost as if she's smothering him. Much to his displeasure, he manages to get some distance from her, while she goes to clean the house's shelves and accidentally knocks over a crystal object. Seeing what happened, Jin-sin yells in anger. Moments later, feeling a bit worried, she calls Shishir to confess that she broke something at home. The model advises her to apologize later, once he's calmed down. Chusi decides to follow this advice and goes to bed. The next day, Chusi wonders if she should apologize for what she did, all while ignoring Jin-sin, who is clearly upset in his office. At that moment, he receives a call from Shishir, who gives him the good news that she managed to fix the crystal piece. He thanks her, but she insists that as a thank you, she'd like to have dinner at his house. Oh, how nosy! Jin-sin immediately informs his fiancée, who shows no emotion and leaves without a word. Later in the afternoon, Shishir arrives at the house and, without hesitation, starts chatting with Chusi, showing that there's some kind of friendship between them, which makes our boss a bit uneasy. Within seconds, the model hands Jin-sin the box with the repaired crystal and scolds Chusi for not knowing how important the object was to him, as it was a family gift. This makes Chusi deeply sad, feeling guilty, and she distances herself from the table. Afterward, our boss complains to Shishir for what she said, and she simply leaves the house. Jin-sin then sits next to his fiancée and apologizes for not explaining the significance of the item she broke. However, Chusi confronts him, suspicious that he had some sort of relationship with Shishir, since she seems to know so much about him. To calm her, he pulls her into his arms and leads her to the living room. Once there, he shows her a box filled with childhood memories, like certificates and a photo album that includes a picture of his dog, a Shiba Inu named Lil Potato, who passed away in a car accident. He explains that the dog's ashes were placed inside the crystal object, which is why it meant so much to him. Later, they come across a picture of Jin-sin's friend Yonglei, who was bullied in school for his sexual orientation. Sadly, he disappeared without a trace after graduating high school. After closing the album, he asks Chusi about her life, to which she simply responds that she comes from a humble family that lived in the countryside. She mentions that as a baby, she had a severe illness that caused financial strain on her family for years. That's why she started working as a teenager to help with the household expenses. The next morning, Chusi meets with Hwaijin to discuss some work matters. During the conversation, he sits next to her and invites her to a fancy restaurant to continue their discussion. While there, he reveals that he had a friend who looks a lot like her, and that she was his first love. During dinner, Hwaijin recommends a famous cherry pie, but Chusi declines, as she's allergic to cherries. This leaves Hwaijin a little confused since his friend was also allergic to cherries. Suddenly, Jin-sin calls, clearly upset, asking where she is. Chusi finds herself needing to leave for home. When she arrives, her fiancé scolds her for not being home on such a special day, his birthday. In a panic, she rushes to the kitchen to prepare a birthday dinner. But all she manages to do is hand him some raw eggs, forcing Jin-sin to be the one to cook the meal. The next day, as a birthday gift, Chusi decides to fulfill her duties both as a fiancé and as his assistant. She makes breakfast and prepares his outfit, so he won't waste any time. Jin-sin begins undressing, so she can help him get dressed in his suit. After getting ready, the couple heads to the office, where they overhear some of Chizia's colleagues commenting on how handsome Jin-sin looks in his suit. The couple enters the elevator with these colleagues and starts speaking loudly about how much they love each other, making the girls uncomfortable for the entire ride. Once at the office, they chat for a few minutes until Jin-sin asks her to order dinner for that night, making Chusi incredibly happy as she leaves work with a big smile on her face. A few days later, Chusi receives a strange call from her mother, who seems to be arguing with her father. She finds out that her father has been cheating with a much younger woman and is now demanding that Chusi send him money. Luckily, Chusi and Jin-sin arrive just in time to help, and Jin-sin shows photos proving the man's affair with his mistress. Seeing the photos, Chizia's mother immediately demands a divorce, but the man refuses, knowing that if they separate, he won't receive any financial support from his daughter, who, let's not forget, is engaged to a wealthy company executive. That's when Jin Sin decides to leave everything in the hands of a renowned lawyer who had been present the whole time. That afternoon, Chizia's mother goes to stay at the couple's home for a few days, and Jin Sin kindly offers her the master suite, where Chu-si will also stay. Concerned, Jin Sin rushes to the room to get everything ready beforehand. After organizing the bedroom, the three gather in the living room, and Chizia's mother thanks them for their help. However, Chu-si begins feeling insecure as she realizes she's falling for Jin Sin and knows there are many beautiful women around him who could win him over. Her thoughts are interrupted when Jin Sin calls her, letting her know her mother is asking for her in the bedroom. Chu-si leaves behind a doll to keep him company during the night. In the bedroom, Chu-si apologizes to her mother for not being there when she needed her the most. Her mother reassures her and changes the subject, asking when Chu-si and Jin Sin will officially get married. Chu-si responds that they haven't thought about it yet. In another scene, Shishir scolds Chizia's father's mistress for failing to create enough conflict in the family and drive Jin Sin away. However, the mistress manages to find some important information, making Shishir very pleased. The next morning, Jin Sin takes his fiancée and her mother to a special place. He's bought a small clothing store for her mother to run. At first, she refuses the offer, but Jin Sin eventually convinces her. As mother and daughter leave the place excited, Jin Sin receives a call from Shishir, inviting him to a private meeting to discuss something important about his fiancée, promising a big revelation that night. Jin Sin picks Shishir up from the parking lot, and she accidentally trips and falls into his arms. From a distance, a photographer captures several pictures of them together. Afterward, they get into the car, and Shishir explains that Chu-si is not the biological daughter of the woman she believes is her mother. Because of this, her husband and grandmother don't accept her. Jin Sin responds that he already knew, as he had hired a private investigator who discovered that Chizia's mother had found her when she was just 5 years old. Despite this, the manipulative Shishir questions if he's not afraid that Chizia's real parents might come looking for money. Jin Sin replies that if that happens, he'll pay whatever it takes. Shishir insists that he should tell Chu-si the truth, but Jin Sin demands she promise not to say anything. That evening, they go to an upscale restaurant to celebrate Shishir's birthday. Uninterested, Jin Sin simply watches in silence. Meanwhile, Chu-si discovers through social media that her fiancé was photographed with a model at the restaurant. She immediately tries to call Jin Sin, but he doesn't answer. As he leaves the restaurant, Jin Sin receives a call from a colleague informing him about the rumors circulating online, particularly one accusing him of being unfaithful to his fiancée. He asks her to delete the story, fearing it will upset Chu-si. Meanwhile, Jin Sin meets Sichi at a restaurant, and in a tense confrontation, he plays a recording of his conversation with the journalist. Sichi, with tears in her eyes, tries to justify her actions, claiming everything was done out of love. Jin Sin, resolute, reaffirms his love for Chu-si and shows an old photo of them as teenagers, proving their unbreakable bond. Emotional and defeated, Sichi promises not to interfere in his life again, and they part ways, each heading in their own direction. The next day, Jin Sin watches a video online where Sichi admits to being the one who incited all the hate against Chu-si. She declares that she will step back from social media to focus on her personal life. With the situation finally clarified, Jin Sin dresses in a stylish black suit, puts on sunglasses and a mask, and heads to the hotel where his fiancée is staying. Upon arriving, his heart warms at the sight of her. He embraces her warmly and confesses how much he loves her. Chu-si, moved, responds that she loves him too, and at that moment, everything seems to fall into place. Back at home, Jin Sin kneels before Chu-si, holding a beautiful diamond ring. With his voice trembling with emotion, he asks for her hand in marriage. Chu-si, her eyes sparkling with happiness, accepts, and they share a passionate kiss, sealing the new chapter of their lives. In the next scene, a mysterious man appears and hands a photograph to Jin Sin. The image reveals Chu-si and her twin sister, who, surprisingly, are heirs to the influential flower group. With a somber look, Jin Sing learns that her sister died in a car accident, making Chusi the sole heiress of the family. Remember, every K-drama fan is subscribed to Uncle Drama. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a like. See you next time